All right. The government currently is running what you call a very emergency response to
Yes.
COVID-19.
Yes.
And you have sort of led the private sector.
Yeah.
What has that been like in the last 2 weeks?
So first, let's correct something which is absolutely important to me personally. I haven't led the private sector. I have coordinated. Yes, and that's different because there's no. I mean, these are all leaders. So it's worked very well. It's worked very well because my past experience in some of these things. Not that I've dealt with an epidemic before. No, nobody has dealt with a pandemic. I foresaw that there was going to be a need for this kind of thing because what normally happens is that everybody responds in their own individual way. Then they call me to give them publicity for the things they've done. And I figured this is going to be overwhelming. I can't have everybody on the bring everybody coming with either handing over a check or giving over stuff. So I thought to myself, let me call the people that I know would normally be open to doing this so that we have a coordinated response. So that was the first motivation. And it has worked very well because we've got over 70 CEOs in the group. We're all coordinating what we give. If I have given this, so then the next step was, what do you give? Does the need for it exist? I mean, I can give newspapers, but who is going to read them? So we had to find out what did the ministry need to fight the disease. So the ministry then outlined the things that they required. So we then went back to the group and shared and said, yeah, the ministry needs X, Y, Z. Are we able to marshal resources and do this? Oh yeah, but by the way, there is also a public need for that. So, so you've seen the taps, you've seen the soap needs, poor communities and so on. Now that has been very helpful because what it did is it took away 2 headaches. It took away the headache on the part of the ministry to have to manage the multiple offers for assistance and coordinating all of that and the logistics. They just transferred that headache to us. The other headache it took away is the headache of the CEO trying to figure out what he can do and follow it up. So I got into the middle of all of that, and I was the one person that all of them could trust, so without reservation. So many of them have said, okay, Robert, so here it is. So you, as long as it gets the ministry, as long as all our governance issues. So that's how it has worked, and the mobilization has been wonderful. I mean, it's the results, but it's also been a rallying point in terms of rallying people from, because otherwise we could be standing on the sidelines and accusing government of failure. But this is not the time. This is not when you start pointing out the weaknesses of government, because it won't make a difference. It won't change anything. I like people who say, no, but we must hold government to account, then it will save lives. No, it doesn't. I mean, if a particular government department is incompetent, it won't change simply because a journalist has said it. So, but we need to deal with the consequences of those gaps. So, if you are able to fill the gap, fill it. Do something. I mean, there was a time people were shouting about quarantine centers, but hotels weren't willing to give their structures. Now we had to find a solution. So the ministry found schools, worked with the Ministry of Education and found schools, but they had no mattresses. So that's now the private sector comes and says, here are mattresses. How many do you need? We need 1,500 mattresses. Now you have mattresses. Say, oh, but by the way, we need beddings. Here you are. Now they have quarantine centers. Actually, they have more capacity for quarantine than the quarantine numbers. At least I know that. So that's what this was about primarily. The second thing which we now realized we needed to coordinate was to say this pandemic is going to affect the business community. Do we all, each one of us, find our way to government as individuals, or do we coordinate our needs? So that was the second reason we got together to say, okay, we're coming from different sectors, but if there's going to be a government response on the economy, let's have coordinated documentation. Let people not run, this is hotels, then oil, then newspapers, then no. So let's all come together, because we're finding that the things we're asking for are the same. Interest rates, tax relief, payment of domestic debt, all those, they're the same, doesn't make a difference. They stay on interest charges in the banks and so on. So we were able to coordinate our needs and our recommendations and submit one document to the relevant ministries, finance and trade. So any subsequent debate or discussion about what should happen in the economic interventions is now being informed by that document. But there's going to be a long recovery. So we've got to discuss that. Thirdly, we needed to learn from each other. Some of our members had more advanced business continuity plans than others. So we shared things that we wanted to do. So what is New Vision doing? What's UNRWA doing? What's the electricity guys doing? What's the factories doing? What are the telecoms doing? What are the transporters doing? What is real estate doing? How is this affecting us? And what has happened is we now have learned from each other. I mean, the effect on the hotel industry is devastating. But the pharmaceuticals, this is their time. The cleaning and detergent companies, the demand is high. The food companies, same story. Logistics. I've learned a lot from people like Jumia and Safe Border and the structure of their business. So that's what this was all about. And now we are looking at how we can be of help to vulnerable communities. Because some of them were people who worked in our sectors. If you look at the people who used to work in bars, where are they now? All the bars are closed. So I don't know if I have ever shared with you this, but one very interesting statistic I can give you. So there's estimated 83,500 bars. If each bar on average hires 5 people, that's 417,500 people out of work. If you say that each of them has 3 dependents, a partner and 2 children, that's 1.2 million people, 1.252 million people whose livelihood is gone. Just one activity, bars. You haven't added hotels where to live 400,000 people. You haven't gone into the distributors, the transport sector. It's a million border guys, they are out of work. How do you deal with that situation? It requires more resources than the government has at its disposal. So we said, let's get together. If the government needs the intellectual resources of us as a business community, we'll be available in one pool and give it to them as and when they need it.
Do you feel, for the time that you've carried out this response, do
Yes.
you feel that things have changed or moved much faster? Or do you feel like the gap has been filled?
Yes, 100%. Because we've been coordinating very, very closely with government. So very, very closely. And so government has benefited from the way we do decision making and the way we mobilize for resources, but we've also benefited from understanding how handling of such public matters is done by government. And I think because of that shared partnership, the effect, the communication alone, it's the private media houses that stepped in and said, let's do this for you. The telecoms did ringtones with printed stuff, radios spoke, television shows. All of us have television live stuff going on. So this has been very helpful. Fuel companies have given fuel, so when people want to go out and do surveillance, the fuel is there. Protective gear. We've learned logistical issues. It's been just 2 weeks of, but also just the sheer value of the confidence, to show the government and the people working on this problem that they have the full support of the business community and others. It's so important for them in doing their work that they felt, okay, these guys understand us. We're happy to do our job.
Finally, where does this go? We could be in a lockdown for longer than we are now. Even if we came out recovering.
I think that one of the things that personally I do, and now it's coming back to pay me in large amounts, I do long distance running for recreation. That's how I go for entertainment. With long distance running, you realize that you will go up hills, you'll go downhill, you'll run straight. The key issue is you know that in your mind it's going to take a long time. What needs to happen to the Ugandan psyche is to understand that this is going to take a very long time. It is going to take a very long time. The effects of it will be with us for a very long time. I mean, just think about this. How do you revive the oil sector, for instance, and all those discussions? And yet that had a knock-on effect on people coming to stay in hotels. How do you rebuild the conference circuit? Will the aid industry begin again, and so on? So the whole economic activity is going to take like a long time before it resets itself, and you have those. I mean, we in the media are going to have to rebuild our whole advertising industry. We're going to rebuild readership. We're going to have to rethink the models that generate revenue. That is going to be a long time coming. So I think people have to brace for the worst. There's a verse in the Bible that I can't remember. I read it somewhere anyway. I don't know which one. Let me not pretend that I know biblical stuff very much. But it says, store food, build walls, and keep quiet, and wait. It will come in handy. So I think we're going to go into a phase where, you know, we're going to have to preserve. So we're going to go into a self-preservation mode for a while. And then when you survive that mode, then you can now start building. So we will not disappear, but we will not be the same. And I think there will be shrinkage in the media space, definitely, but also economically there will be a bit of shrinkage. Some activities, especially in the service sector, will collapse. I mean, if you think about it, the entertainment industry has been shut down. How do you rebuild? If I was a musician, now I would be writing songs and preparing to do a show in December. If I was a nightclub, I would be remodeling. So if I was an influencer, I would be rethinking my methods of influencing. How do I build my audiences? So many things which we have taken for granted until last week are gone. Do you have the presence of mind, you as an individual, to intellectually process this and what it means? People are wasting these 2 weeks of staying at home. They are quarreling, they are posting their cuts on social media, they are talking nonsense, they are sharing things. If you don't have anything to do, if you're stuck for to do, read. You're going to need it in the next 2 years.
All right, thank you so much.
Welcome.